Good afternoon. We are beginning week 6, almost there, so hang in. This week is going to be a little content heavy, so I'm going to jump right into some feedback on your assignments quickly. Most of you, if not all of you, used headings on this paper, which were very helpful. I did post comments if your paper was already Google linked. So make sure that you check your paper for those comments. I didn't put all of them into the comments section of Blackboard. Almost everybody except one of you did not cite your personal communications correctly, so I want to remind you that that's on page 179 in the APA manual, and you might want to tab that for future use. Many of you used additional outside sources so that you had a more extensive reference list, and I wanted to note that and commend you for that work. Our objectives for this week are focusing on servant leadership, and one of the things that they want to bring to our attention is that educational leadership is not about position, place, or hierarchy. It's about our practice. The concept of servant leadership was coined about 30 years ago by Robert Greenleaf, who spent the majority of his career working in the corporate world at AT&T. And you can visit his website, greenleaf.org, if you'd like some more information on that. So that takes us into our readings because it ties in with the article that you're asked to read this week, The Writings of Robert Greenleaf. And the author, Anderson, brings Greenleaf's work into the 21st century. So it's a rather long paper, about 33 pages, but the headings are pretty clear, so I think that might direct you. About the last 10 pages of this article are diagrams. So he spends some time talking about how to move from the prevailing culture to a God-centered servant leadership culture. Tied in with this article is going to be your discussion board question. So I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. You do have 2 other videos to look at. One of them is from Simon Sinek, who is a leadership expert. If you haven't seen any of his videos before, he's very engaging. This one's about 5 minutes from the CBS morning show. Simon Sinek is best known for his work or his concept of the golden circle and the power of why, which is very compelling. And then there's a second video, Desmond Tutu on leadership, and I'm sorry I forgot to note how long that video is. So going back to the article on the discussion board, you're going to consider the concept of student leadership and how it compares and contrasts to the 5 leadership practices that were in your textbook, The Leadership Challenge. So each of you are going to post a different provocative quote from Anderson's interpretive analysis of servant leadership. That's the article that you're being asked to read, along with an analysis of how the quote relates to one of the 5 practices. So if you remember what those 5 practices were, it was model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. So please comment on whether or not the quote you chose to share fits in with your own leadership philosophy and why. 2 paragraphs maximum. Don't forget to cite both the article and the work from your textbook. Cite those within your 2 paragraphs and put the references at the end of your discussion board entry. So that is the one discussion that you're being asked to submit this week. And I'm going to say, if you write out your discussion and then you find someone else has stolen your quote, don't worry about it. I think that you might have different responses to it. So you might skim through them before you choose your quote and see if anybody's already taken it, but don't rewrite something that you've already planned to submit. Let's talk about the assignment 4 that's due at the end of next week. This is the leadership philosophy paper, and it includes your reading reflection journal that we've been talking about for the last 5 weeks. So this is time to reflect on the facets of leadership that we've been learning about and apply them to your own personal and professional life. This is to be a 4+ page paper, and it is personal in nature, so you may write it in first person. We don't often use first person in APA, but you may do that for this paper. You do not need to advocate on any one theory of leadership, but you should show a depth of personal understanding by connecting the concepts and ideas that you've learned throughout the course. Your reflection journal is going to be attached as an appendix to the paper, and the elements of the paper are going to be the following. Now, these are taken right from the rubric. So as you look at the directions mirror the rubric. You're going to talk about outside influences which have shaped your philosophy of leadership. That's worth 5 points. So you are to reflect upon a negative or positive experience with a leader who has helped you to develop your leadership vision today. This is very similar to one of the discussion boards that you had a few weeks ago, so you can pull from some of that information you've already posted. Then, again, for 5 points, you're going to develop a personal vision. And this relates to personal experiences and challenges that you've had as you've developed your leadership vision. So this should be explained by reflecting on your personal leadership situation you've encountered. And I know that you have all put that on there because I read all of these, I think, in week 3. Then the next section is course connections. This part is worth 10 points. And using your reading reflection journal, you're going to start discussing those connections you've made between your own leadership philosophy and concepts that have been particularly resonating with you during the course. So again, this is a place where you can cite your sources in your paper. Following that, section 4 is a statement of your current leadership philosophy. That's 5 points. 2 or 3 paragraphs. You're going to write a leadership philosophy statement that reflects your current thinking about leadership as you have grown through your professional and personal experiences in graduate studies. And I've been mulling this around in my head because I think it's pretty close in nature to the personal experiences and challenges. But let's keep them separate by reflecting back on the week that you talked about leaders that were good or bad and ones that you would want to emulate. And keep that, what you've learned from those personal experiences. And then in this statement, you're kind of coupling that with what you've learned in your professional experiences and through this class and other classes as well. And that will bring you to a point where you would be writing a brief statement about your personal vision of leadership. And that one is worth, I think I said, 5 points. Then you are being asked to implement your new knowledge as you interface with students, peers, supervisors, family, and friends. Again, a 5-point section. So these 5 pointers, a couple of paragraphs, 1 paragraph, just make sure that you're fully addressing the question. Those are the sections of your paper, and you may want to label them after your introduction of your paper, which does not have a heading. There's no heading that says introduction. You just begin with your paper and you give a brief introduction to what you're going to be addressing. And then your headings, and this is all in the directions that are on Blackboard. Your first heading might be outside influences. Second heading, developing a personal vision. Third is your course connections. Fourth is your statement of leadership philosophy. Fifth is your applications. And then it's going to ask you for a conclusion, a wrapping up of your paper and your ideas. Now, let me go back to my notes here. Okay, make sure that you have paragraph and sentence transitions that are present and logical, and maintain the flow of your paper. A few of you in your last paper had very long paragraphs. Some of them were over a page long. That gets hard to follow, to be honest with you. So break those down and make sure that they flow easily within that section of the heading. You do need an introduction. As I said, it's not labeled introduction. Make sure that your grammar, punctuation, and spelling are correct, and that your sentences are complete, clear, and concise, and using varied languages. This is some of the things we teach our students, so we want to make sure that we're applying them here. You do need to have an APA title page and a reference page. I think almost all of you are doing the running head correctly. If you're not, I've put that as a comment on your paper or in my comments on Blackboard. Your body, as I said earlier, the body of the paper is at least 4 pages. Now, when I say that, please don't submit a 10-page paper. The reason I'm saying that is because you want to make sure that you can be concise about your writing, that you are not just kind of letting yourself go into a free flow of thoughts. So keep your paper concise. I would say 4 to 6 pages. You must have citations within your paper, and I would suggest that you have citations in almost every section. You're asked to do a minimum of 5 different citations, so that means you're going to have at least 5 references in your reference page. You may use the references that you have used previously if they apply. And then using your reading reflection journal, you have to cite a minimum of 5 different sources. So that means that in your reading reflection journal, you were asked to reflect on at least 2 ideas or concepts per week, which would give you a total of at least 12 entries in your reading reflection journal. Someone emailed me that today, and when I went back and looked at the journal, it asked you for 2 per week. So for the 6 weeks, you should have at least 12 entries. That reading reflection journal is going to be an appendix, and that appendix will follow your reference page. So make sure your reference page is started on a separate page. It starts at the normal spaces down about 1.5 inches from the top, just like any other page. And it's not, some of you triple space between your entries. It's double spaced with the hanging indent. So make sure that you go through the rubric and look at the rubric, because that's how I score. If it's not on the rubric, then I'm not going to ask you for it. So make sure that you are looking at that rubric. And then I'm going to assume, I think I saw that 2 out of the 4 groups have submitted their topic for the final assignment, the group assignment that's due on week 8. So make sure that you've contacted your group members and that you're working on that as well. You won't have any other large assignments due in week 7, so that gives you a little while to finish up that assignment. I hope most of you got started on it this week, because this assignment 4 of your reflection paper is going to take you a little bit of time, because you need to make sure that you've read all of your materials, have your journal complete. If you've been doing your journal all along, then that should actually guide your work with this paper. So I'm going to stop there. That's about all I need to say to you today. If you have any questions, please email me, call me, or text me, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks.